My perfect husband had an affair with my niece, who I raised like a daughter. All right, so this is a mess. I feel stupid for not realizing sooner. But I guess hindsight really is 20/20ths. My husband and I have been together for years. We've had our ups and downs, but I always thought he was a solid guy, you know? The kind of husband you could rely on. The kind that maybe even other people rely on too. A little background because I think it helps explain why I'm so thrown here. My niece Anastasia is 23, and she's my brother's daughter. Her mom took off with some random guy ages ago, and my brother isn't what anyone would call reliable. He barely works, drinks more than he should, and honestly, it feels like he's got zero priorities. Because of that, Anastasia pretty much ended up with me and my husband as her stable family. I'd cook her meals, make sure she was getting her homework done, pick her up from school. You get the idea. My husband was great with her too, which, looking back, was probably part of the problem. For over a year, I'd started noticing her getting a little too interested in him. Like, she'd be very touchy around him, laughing a little too hard at his jokes, always complimenting him. She'd go on about how much she looked up to him, how he was such a role model and all that. And look, I told myself I was reading too much into it. That's on me. I even convinced myself I was just being paranoid, that it was probably just admiration and nothing more. I mean, he's 40 and she's practically family. Who would ever expect their husband to look twice at their own niece? But one thing stuck with me, even back then. There was this one time she insisted on ironing his suits. My husband always wears these expensive suits for work, and I told her it wasn't necessary, but she practically insisted. Said she wanted to help, wanted to be useful and all. It seemed like a small thing then, and I was busy with my own stuff, dealing with my 7-year-old daughter who was having a hard time adjusting to a new school. So I let it go. I figured she was just trying to learn some life skills or whatever, and yeah, maybe I should have seen that as a warning sign. Fast forward to 3 days ago, I was out of town on a business trip. I'd left my daughter with him since I knew he could handle her, or at least I thought he could. But the second day I'm gone, I get this text. It's from an unknown number, and all it says is, "You should know what's been happening between your husband and Anastasia." I remember staring at my phone completely confused, thinking it was a prank. Who would send something like that? But there was this gut feeling that told me to dig a little. When I finally got home, I confronted him. I didn't have much proof, just that one anonymous text. But I think he could tell I was serious, and I'll never forget his face. The guy who always has an answer, always keeps his cool, was suddenly sweating and stammering. That's when he finally admitted it. He said, "It just happened once." Just happened. Once! Like that somehow made it better. He started going on about how he was sorry, how it wasn't planned, how they'd just been sitting around talking and one thing led to another. He tried to make it sound like it was this accident. Said they'd been bonding over everything Anastasia was going through with her dad, all the usual excuses. Said he felt sorry for her, like I hadn't done enough already by basically being her mom for most of her life. I kept asking questions. I wanted to know every detail, but I also didn't want to hear any of it, if that makes sense. And I swear, the worst part of it wasn't even his confession. It was finding out that this wasn't entirely her first time doing something like this. Turns out she's got a thing for older guys, especially ones in power or with some kind of authority. My husband's a successful business owner with a ton of employees, so apparently that made him her perfect target. She'd been telling people that she liked men who were more mature or more established. She didn't even hide it. What hurts the most is that I thought I knew her. She's my niece, someone I practically raised. The idea that she'd betray me like this, knowing all I've done for her, knowing how close I am to her, it just guts me. And maybe that's why I feel so betrayed, because it's not just about my husband's mistake. It's that she was so okay with hurting me. She could have had a guy her own age. Heck, she's beautiful, smart, she could get anyone. But no, she went for my husband. And what does my husband do to make it better? He says, she was just there, I was weak. Like somehow that's supposed to make me feel better? Like he was some helpless bystander, as if he didn't make the choice himself. And the excuses just kept coming. He said they'd been drinking, even though he rarely ever drinks, and he didn't know what came over him. He said she was mature for her age, that he never saw her as just a kid. All this nonsense that doesn't excuse a damn thing. Now I'm stuck with this horrible choice. Do I throw it all away over this one thing? Part of me wants to kick him out right now, make him leave and never come back. But then I think of our daughter. How do I explain this to her? And as for Anastasia, I have no idea how I'll face her. She's not just some random girl who made a mistake. She's family, and she betrayed me in the worst way possible. She didn't even have the decency to hide it, to feel shame or guilt. And the way she looks at me now, with this smug little smile, it's like she thinks she's won something. I wish I could say I've made up my mind about what to do, but I haven't. My husband keeps trying to talk to me, trying to apologize, but I don't think there's anything he can say that'll make this right. And Anastasia, she's become this stranger to me. I feel like a fool for not seeing it sooner, for not stopping it before it got this far. All I know is, I can't just sit here and act like nothing's happened. Everything's different now, and it's tearing me up inside. So after my husband's "it only happened once" excuse, and my niece's smug face still fresh in my memory, I was about ready to pack up and leave everything behind. But as it usually goes, it's not that simple, especially when family is involved. Just when I thought I couldn't feel more alone or betrayed, my family stepped in, and not in a way that made anything better. The day after I found out, I had my mother come over. She knew something was wrong because I'd called her in a fit the night before. She shows up, acting concerned, asking all these questions. And as much as I didn't want to get into the whole mess with her, I just couldn't keep it in anymore. I told her everything, every disgusting detail my husband had admitted, and all the betrayal I felt from Anastasia. Now here's the kicker. Instead of being shocked or outraged, or even mildly surprised, my mom just looked at me with this sad, knowing face. And she said something like, "Well, honey, I knew she was troubled." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mother had known that my niece, the girl I practically raised, had these issues. She'd known that Anastasia was more than a little off, and she kept it to herself. My mom went on, saying she didn't want to add to the family drama, and that she'd hoped Anastasia would just grow out of it. She even admitted that she'd caught her acting strange a few times, but she didn't think it was her place to interfere. I felt my anger boil over. I snapped, asking why she hadn't said a word to me if she knew something was up. And do you know what she said? She said, "I didn't want to hurt you." Well, that ship has sailed, hasn't it? So here I am, realizing that not only did my husband and niece betray me, but my own mother had been hiding things from me too. It's like every single person in my life decided to keep me in the dark. As if things weren't bad enough, my brother, Anastasia's useless father, decides to make an appearance. Now my brother has always been a mess. He barely holds a job, drinks like it's a hobby, and anytime something goes wrong in his life, he expects someone else to clean it up. He walks in, smelling like he hasn't showered in a week, and immediately starts asking for money. Yep, that's right. He's asking me for money, right after I told him about the mess his daughter made of my life. He didn't even react to what I'd just gone through. I'd barely finished explaining, and he's like, "So, you think you could help me out with a little cash?" It was unbelievable. Here I am, trying to keep my marriage and family from falling apart, and my brother is acting like it's just another day. I started telling him to get his act together, to take some responsibility for once, but he just shrugged and said, "She's her own person now, not my fault." Not his fault? He raised her, or, well, he was supposed to, but he failed at that just like everything else in his life. And then, as I'm trying to process all this, my mother decides to chime in, trying to calm me down. She's saying things like, it's been hard on him too, and we all have our struggles. Meanwhile, my brother's just standing there, looking at his nails or whatever, like he's bored. I couldn't take it. I told him to leave, told him that if he wasn't here to support me, he didn't need to be here at all. Of course, he made a big scene, acting all offended, but I didn't care. For once, I needed him to be a brother, and he couldn't even manage that. After he left, my mom sat me down and started talking to me like I was a child. She kept saying, "You know, your niece has had a hard life." Like I didn't already know that. But guess what? So have a lot of people, and they don't go around seducing their aunt's husband. It's like my mom was trying to justify it all, like she wanted me to forgive Anastasia and just move on. She actually suggested I sit down and talk to Anastasia, like this was some kind of minor family misunderstanding we could patch up over a cup of coffee. I couldn't believe it. My niece betrayed me, my husband betrayed me, and now my mother's making me feel guilty for not being understanding enough? She even said something along the lines of, she looks up to him so much. Maybe she just got confused. Confused? That's what we're calling it now? I looked at her and said, "Mom, you can't possibly expect me to just sit down and let this go." Her response? "Well, honey, sometimes family does things we don't understand." That's it. That's her advice. Just deal with it, apparently. I thought she'd be on my side, that she'd at least be mad with me, maybe even cut off Anastasia until she owned up to what she'd done. But no. My mother was practically making excuses for her, like I was being unreasonable for feeling the way I did, By the end of the conversation, I was exhausted. It felt like I'd lost everything. My husband was trying to excuse his behavior, my niece was completely unapologetic, my mother was playing peacemaker, and my brother was, well, my brother. Alone, betrayed, and angry didn't even begin to cover it. I felt like I was drowning, like every time I tried to come up for air, another family member was pushing me back under. I went to bed that night feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. My husband kept trying to talk to me, but I couldn't look at him. I just kept seeing my niece's face, that smug little smile, and my mother's weak excuses running through my mind. All I wanted was one person to be angry with me, to tell me I wasn't crazy or unreasonable for feeling completely shattered by this. But instead, everyone was telling me to just let it go, as if that's even an option. After everything my family put me through, my husband's mistake, my niece's betrayal, my mom's lame excuses, and my brother's absolute disregard for anything that wasn't about his own selfish needs, I needed answers. I'd been fed all these excuses, but something didn't sit right. It felt too convenient, like everyone was in on some story that I was supposed to just accept and get over. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. I started with my husband. He'd been giving me the silent, apologetic treatment, avoiding eye contact like he was afraid I'd throw him out any second. And maybe I should have. But after a night of barely any sleep, staring at the ceiling and replaying every memory of him and my niece together, I knew I had to know how deep this thing went. If there was any chance of me figuring out my next steps, I needed the whole truth. I sat him down at the kitchen table and I told him, no more lies. I want every detail, and I mean every detail. He looked like he wanted to throw up. His face got pale and he started stammering, saying he'd already told me everything, that it was just once and he'd felt terrible about it. But I didn't buy it. I pressed him, told him if he didn't come clean now, he'd lose any shred of respect I had left for him. That's when he started to crack. He told me there had been more times they'd been alone together, more moments where they'd shared these bonding conversations. He went on about how he'd felt fatherly toward her, like she needed guidance, and how he'd stepped in because he felt sorry for her. He said that she'd text him late at night sometimes, ranting about her dad, how her life was a mess, and how she wished she had someone like him. It was one of those late-night conversations where she'd called him up, supposedly needing help. And like an absolute idiot, he'd fallen for it. I asked if they'd met up, if she'd been over to our house without me knowing. And he hesitated. He actually hesitated, which was answer enough for me. I pushed, and finally he admitted it. Yeah, there were nights she came over, nights I was away or busy, and they'd talked in the kitchen until who knows when. He said it was all innocent, but the way he stumbled over his words told me he knew exactly how it sounded. He tried to backtrack, saying, I didn't think it would lead to, what happened. But I couldn't believe him. I was done believing anything that came out of his mouth. I sat there, listening to his pathetic explanations, and all I could think was how stupid I'd been. How had I missed all this? I'd given him every bit of trust, and he'd taken advantage of it. Then he mentioned something that threw me for a loop. He said, your mom was worried too. She told me once she thought Anastasia had issues. She said it was hard for her to grow up with your brother. My mom had known. She'd seen signs. She'd even talked to my husband about it, and she still hadn't said a word to me. She had been watching this all unfold and hadn't bothered to warn me, hadn't even dropped a hint. I felt my chest tighten with rage. So everyone knew something. Everyone but me. I looked at him, feeling a weird mix of disgust and pity. Here was this man, who'd built himself up as this honorable, trustworthy guy, and he'd thrown it all away for some twisted need to be her hero. I walked out of that conversation feeling raw and empty. I had no idea what to do next, but I knew I couldn't stay in the house. I needed to clear my head, so I went for a drive. As I was out, I started thinking back on the little moments, all the things that should have been red flags. There were so many times she'd been a little too affectionate with him, times she'd complimented him in ways that felt off. But I told myself she was just adoring her uncle. I mean, who wouldn't, right? He was the only stable adult she'd had growing up. My next stop was my mom's. I wanted to hear from her own mouth why she'd kept this from me, why she'd let me walk around blindfolded while everyone else saw the truth. When I got there, she seemed uncomfortable, like she knew why I was there. She didn't even let me sit down before she started talking. Look, I didn't want you to get hurt, she said, almost in a whisper. I thought she'd outgrow it. I thought if I kept an eye on her, she'd stay in line. Stay in line? I said, barely keeping my voice steady. Mom, she seduced my husband. How is that staying in line? She gave me this sad, resigned look and said, I didn't know it would go this far. She went on about how Anastasia had always been a troubled kid, how she'd had issues since her mother left, and how I was so busy with my own family that maybe I hadn't noticed. Like it was somehow my fault that she'd ended up like this. I couldn't take anymore. I told her I was done with the excuses, done with everyone acting like this was just something I should forgive. I was boiling over with anger, not just at my husband and niece, but at my entire family for treating me like I was too fragile to handle the truth. They'd all let me believe everything was fine while they kept secrets, and now they were expecting me to just accept it. After that talk with my mom, I went home feeling a strange sense of clarity. I knew that whatever happened next, I couldn't rely on anyone but myself. Everyone else had failed me. I was on my own in this mess, and if I was going to come out of it, it'd be because I got myself out. When I got home, my husband tried to talk to me again, but I couldn't look at him without feeling sick. I told him I needed space, that I didn't want to hear any more apologies or explanations. He tried to argue, saying he just wanted to make things right, but I was done listening. I went to our bedroom, locked the door, and spent the rest of the night wondering how everything had fallen apart so completely, how I'd ended up here with no one left to trust. That was the night I realized I'd never be able to look at my family the same way again. I don't know what finally snapped inside me, but after that mess of a conversation with my mom, I was done playing nice. I'd been betrayed, lied to, and kept in the dark by practically every single person in my life, and I had had enough. So, when I heard that Anastasia had the nerve to stop by my house when she knew damn well I was home, I decided it was time we had a face-to-face. The moment she walked in, she had this smug little grin on her face, like she'd just won something. She didn't even look uncomfortable. She acted like she belonged there, like she hadn't done anything wrong. It was infuriating. I'd raised her, helped her through everything, been her mother figure when her actual mother was nowhere in sight, and this is what I got in return. She didn't even give me a chance to start. She looked around and asked, "Where's Uncle?" Like she wasn't just a guest, but had some right to be here. I told her he wasn't around and that we needed to talk, just the two of us. She shrugged, like it was no big deal, and plopped down on my couch like she owned the place. "Anastasia, what the hell were you thinking?" I started. I didn't sugarcoat it. I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. I wanted her to understand just how deeply she'd hurt me. "I gave you everything. We took you in. I was practically your second mother." She didn't even flinch. She just crossed her legs and looked at me with this calm, almost bored expression. "Oh, come on, Auntie," she said, smirking. "You act like you're so perfect, but you didn't even notice what was going on." That was it. I felt my blood boiling. "You think this is funny? You think you can just waltz in here and act like this is a game? You went after my husband, Anastasia. My husband!" I couldn't even control my voice anymore. I wanted her to feel every ounce of my anger. She didn't seem bothered at all. She just sighed and looked at her nails like I was boring her. "You're so dramatic," she muttered, barely even looking up. "Maybe if you hadn't been so busy with your perfect little life, you would have noticed that Uncle needed someone who actually appreciated him." I couldn't believe the audacity. Here she was, throwing everything in my face, twisting the knife as if she was the victim in all of this. "Appreciated him? What are you talking about? Your family. He's your uncle. How do you not see how sick this is?" She just shrugged. "Family doesn't mean anything to me. It never has. Why should it?" She said it with this coldness that I'd never seen in her before. It was like she was a stranger. No, worse, like she was some kind of manipulative predator. She started going on about how she deserved someone like my husband, how he was wasting his time with someone who didn't understand him. She actually had the nerve to tell me that he was better off with her. "You're insane, Anastasia. This isn't normal. You need help." I spat at her, feeling a shiver go down my spine. She didn't react to that. Instead, she just smiled again, that smug, infuriating smile that made me want to scream. And then, she dropped the bomb that nearly knocked the wind out of me. "He doesn't love you, you know. He's just with you out of pity. We talked about it, and he told me how miserable he is, how he feels trapped with you. He said he'd leave you if it weren't for your daughter." I wanted to scream, to throw her out, to do something, but I just froze. I knew she was trying to hurt me, trying to get under my skin, but part of me couldn't shake the fear that maybe, just maybe, there was a grain of truth in her words. That was her game, after all, using any weakness she could find and twisting it into a weapon. She leaned back, watching me struggle to keep my composure, and then went on. "You're so focused on what you think I did wrong, but maybe you should take a look at yourself. I mean, if he's so happy, why would he come to me?" I was done. I couldn't let her sit there acting like she had all the control. I stood up and told her to leave, my voice barely steady. "You need to get out. You're not welcome here, not anymore. You're sick, and I don't want you anywhere near my family." And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something on her face that wasn't pure confidence. anger. She jumped up, her calm act shattered, and started throwing every nasty thing she could think of at me. She told me I was pathetic, that my husband was with her because I was too old and too boring to keep his attention. She accused me of treating her like a charity case, of making her feel less than, just because I took care of her. Then she went too far. She picked up a photo of my daughter off the table, looked at it and sneered. I feel sorry for her, having you as a mom. Maybe if you'd put half as much effort into your own family as you did trying to save me, none of this would have happened. I saw red. I lunged forward, grabbed the photo from her, and pointed to the door. Get out, now, before I do something I regret. She stormed out, muttering something under her breath, and slammed the door behind her. I stood there, shaking, clutching the photo, and feeling like my whole world had come crumbling down. I'd lost my husband's loyalty, my niece's respect, and apparently, even my own family thought I was in the wrong for not understanding her. But standing there in that silent, empty house, I realized something important. I didn't need any of them. I didn't need the husband who betrayed me, the niece who manipulated me, or the family who enabled them. I'd spent so long trying to hold everything together, but maybe it was time to let it fall apart. Maybe it was time to stop being the one who fixed everything and start looking out for myself. As I locked the door, I took one last look around and felt something I hadn't felt in days. A spark of clarity. They'd all tried to break me, to make me question my own reality, but I was still standing. And if they thought I was just going to roll over and let them control my life, they were dead wrong. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more fake family loyalty. After throwing Anastasia out of my house and watching her disappear down the driveway, I felt like I could finally breathe. But the moment of clarity didn't last long because I still had a mess of a life to clean up. The reality of what had happened hit me hard. My husband betrayed me, my niece turned out to be a stranger, and my family was more interested in keeping the peace than supporting me. I was left with one question. What now? I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, and there was no way I could stay in the same house with my husband. Not after everything he'd done and all the lies he'd told. I thought back to all the times he'd looked me in the eye and made me feel like I was his priority, like our family was his top priority. Now I knew those were just empty words, as hollow as his apologies. I needed to put some distance between us, clear my head, and figure out what I wanted. The first step was telling him to leave. I went into the living room where he was sitting on the couch, looking as miserable as ever. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. You need to pack a bag and go, I told him, my voice surprisingly calm. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here tonight. I need space, and I need time. You've taken enough from me, and I need to start taking something back. He looked at me like he'd just been slapped. Where am I supposed to go? He asked, like that was my problem. Not my concern, I replied, not breaking eye contact. Find a hotel, stay with a friend, I don't care, just get out. It felt strangely empowering, watching him scramble to come up with a response. For once, he didn't have an excuse ready, no justifications, no empty promises to make it all better. He knew he couldn't fix this, and I could tell by the look on his face that he finally got it. After he'd packed his things and left, the silence in the house was almost deafening. But I felt something else mixed in with that silence. A sense of relief. I wasn't about to start pretending this was easy, but getting him out of the house felt like the first step toward reclaiming my own space, my own life. I went from room to room, feeling the weight of all the memories pressing down on me. Some part of me wanted to burn it all down, but I knew that was just the anger talking. I didn't need to destroy everything. I just needed to take back what was mine. That night, I did something I hadn't done in days. I took out my laptop and started researching divorce lawyers. I didn't want to rush into anything, but I knew I needed to be prepared. If this was going to end, it would end on my terms. I wasn't about to let him play the victim or twist this story around to make it seem like some kind of mistake we could just get over. I'd sacrificed too much to just let him walk away without consequences. The next day, I decided it was time to talk to my daughter. She'd seen the tension, heard the arguments, and I didn't want her to think this was normal. I sat her down, kept it simple, and told her that her dad and I needed to spend some time apart. I told her it wasn't her fault, that we both loved her and always would. Watching her little face struggle to understand broke my heart. I'd done everything I could to protect her from this mess, but here she was, caught in the middle. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my husband and me. I was making these decisions not only for myself, but for her. I wanted her to grow up in a home where people respected each other, where trust meant something. I wasn't willing to teach her that it was okay to let people betray you and just let it go. She deserved better than that, and so did I. After that, things felt a little clearer. I started making calls, setting up consultations with a few attorneys, and organizing everything I needed to start moving forward. It was overwhelming, to say the least. Every phone call, every form I filled out was a reminder of how much I'd lost, of how everything I thought I'd built with this man had just crumbled to dust. But there was also a strange comfort in it, knowing I was taking control, that I wasn't just sitting around hoping things would magically fix themselves. Throughout all of this, my family was eerily silent. I hadn't heard from my mom since the day I confronted her, and honestly, I didn't care. Her excuses, her way of sweeping things under the rug, it was part of what led me here in the first place. I didn't need her support, if that's what she called it. I was done letting her tell me to look the other way, to be understanding about things that were unacceptable. Then, just when I thought I could move forward without any more drama, I got a message from my brother. He had the audacity to ask me for help. Apparently, he'd heard through the grapevine that I'd kicked my husband out, and he wanted to talk. I couldn't help but laugh. The man who'd shown zero empathy, who'd brushed off his daughter's actions like they were a joke, now wanted my help. It was ridiculous. But I was done with him too. I told him that he and Anastasia were no longer part of my life, that they had crossed a line they couldn't come back from. And you know what? He didn't even argue. He just said fine, like he was relieved he didn't have to pretend to care anymore. That was it. Another bridge burned, another tie severed. After that, I felt an odd sense of closure. I'd always believed in keeping family close, no matter what, but this situation showed me that not everyone deserved a place in my life. Sometimes, family wasn't about blood. It was about respect, trust, and loyalty. And if those things weren't there, then what's the point? By the time the weekend rolled around, I was feeling lighter. It's not like all the pain had disappeared. That would take time. Probably more time than I wanted to admit. But I'd taken the first steps. My husband was out of the house, my family was out of my life, and I was starting to rebuild on my terms. As I stood in my now quiet home, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: peace. It was a new kind of peace, one that came from knowing I was done sacrificing my own happiness for people who didn't deserve it. I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, I was ready for it. I was done looking back. And just like that, I knew I'd finally taken my life back. Update. It was only a matter of time before Anastasia's choices caught up with her, and now, they finally have. Word got around that she got tangled up with another married man, except this time the wife wasn't about to sit back and let it slide. She confronted Anastasia, and things got ugly. Really ugly. Apparently, the wife went after her hard, enough to land Anastasia in the hospital with a broken nose and bruises everywhere. And the guy she'd been with? Divorced, apparently. I guess Anastasia isn't his perfect woman now that he's single. I wasn't surprised, not one bit. Part of me thought, this is what happens when you make a career out of going after other people's husbands. But it didn't take long for my mom to start with the phone calls, the guilt tripping, and the same old family speech I've heard 1,000 times before. She's really sorry, you know, my mom said the second I picked up the phone. She's been through a lot, and she just needs her family right now. She wants to apologize to you to make things right. But I wasn't having it. Sorry? I laughed bitterly. Where was this sorry when she was tearing my family apart? Where was it when she decided to make my life hell? She's been in so much pain, Mom kept going, not even hearing me. And now she's stuck in that hospital bed. You don't have to forgive her, but at least let her apologize. Just visit her once. It's all she's asking for. I took a deep breath, feeling that familiar anger bubbling up again. Mom, I'm not interested. She's paying for her own choices now, and I'm done pretending she's some victim. She made her bed. Now she can lie in it. Please, she pushed, her voice turning pleading. She's family. That was the last straw. No, Mom, she destroyed this family. And now you're asking me to come and comfort her? I'm done with her. And if you keep pushing this, I'll be done with you, too. I hung up, feeling a strange sense of relief. Maybe that sounds cold, but the truth is, I don't have any sympathy left for Anastasia. She crossed every line, threw away every bit of love and support I'd ever given her, and turned my life into a nightmare. So no, I won't be visiting her. I won't be showing up to accept her apology or make her feel better about what she's done. She wanted to play with people's lives, wreck homes, and act like it didn't matter. Now she's facing the consequences of that, and I'm not going to be her shoulder to cry on. As far as I'm concerned, I've moved on, and I'm keeping it that way.